Hello, thanks for joining me. So I thought I would make a video tonight about, well, kind of answering some questions that I came up with kind of as like a Q&A thing about astrology. So the first question is, what got me into astrology? So I've probably talked about this in some previous videos. Basically, I would say astrology was something that was always with me in some sense, or at least from very early childhood, it was kind of in my consciousness a little bit, at least, because my um, mum's friend, when I was a kid, used to come to our house a lot. We would go to her house a lot as well, and she was interested in astrology. And she had done a few readings for people as well and things like that. And she used to always talk about astrology. She used to have a notebook where she wrote kind of little notes about aspects and transits and things like that. And it's something that I wish I did more as well. I wish I had like, I have an astrological calendar where I like to look at where the moon sign, where the moon currently is, what sign the moon is in, what aspects are being made every day, things like that. But I don't really make notes, and I really actually like the idea of making notes, um, kind of about astrology when it comes to, like, let's say the transits and how they're impacting me, or how I see them playing out in the world or in my own life or in people I know, and their lives. So for example, if you know some planet is conjuncting one of my planets, and how does that show up in me? And I think that it would be cool, and I actually recommend that if people are interested in kind of keeping notes so that they can kind of build a better understanding of astrology and kind of create a deeper and closer relationship with astrology. I think it's good to like watch these patterns, but I don't do that so much. I would like to do it more, but anyway, I got off track already. But anyway, she did that, and she talked about astrology, and so it was always kind of in my consciousness. I don't remember exactly how it started, but as a kid, like, she would just kind of talk about, oh, I'm a Taurus, so I do this. She's a Taurus, like, oh, I'm a Taurus, so I do this, or I have this sign, or this moon sign, or like I have this aspect, this transit going on, and this is how it's playing out in me. So it was something that I kind of learned about from her in a way, and my mum was interested in it to a certain degree as well, although she wasn't as knowledgeable about it, I would say, overall. Also, when I was a kid, we had a book at home. I think we probably had a few astrology books, but the one I remember clearly was the book Sun Signs by Linda Goodman. So I actually read that as a kid a few times, actually. So that was kind of how I introduced, I suppose, one of the ways in which I introduced myself to the signs, or the essence of the signs. Even though it doesn't take into account a lot of other things, that book, but it kind of gave me an understanding in some sense of some of the essence of the signs. And then when we got a computer at home, I started being interested in sort of looking up on like astro.com, for example, the different charts, looking at synastry charts with like me and my mom, or me and my sister and people like that, and looking at my own birth chart and getting to know the aspects. I really felt like I started developing a deeper relationship with the aspects, in particular, birth chart aspects in particular, when I started going online and looking up kind of the nitty gritty of my own birth chart and the birth charts of people in my life. Next thing I want to talk about is, have I ever taken a break from astrology? So yes, I have. It hasn't necessarily been like, okay, I'm going to sit down now and decide, okay, I'm going to take a break from astrology, but it kind of happens every once in a while with me that I want to take a break, or that I want to just, I just, sometimes I went through this recently as well, that sometimes I also just start doing other things. Like, I moved house recently and I was preoccupied with other things. And so I start looking at astrological content less sometimes, or I'm thinking less about where the moon is, where Mars is right now, things like that. I think it's good to kind of know where you stand with something, and I think with astrology, sometimes it is difficult for me to really know where I stand with it in certain areas. Like, I think astrology should be something that is helpful and relevant and deep, in not just kind of magazine astrology or just simply sun sign astrology or something like that, although that can tell you certain things as well. But I think because I'm sometimes unsure about certain aspects of it in terms of how I feel about certain elements of it or how to approach it, how to do it myself, that has sometimes led me to taking a break from it a little bit, if that makes any sense. Like sometimes I will be very into it, I will consume a lot of content about it. I like looking at global transits and things like that, but then sometimes I will kind of take a break, or just it will just be a natural occurrence that I'm not looking at astrological content as much for a period of time. But I think it's something that I always come back to. So I think that's the key point here, is that I think astrology is always in my consciousness to a certain degree, and so it's always something that I come back to after a while. Next question, what are my parents' signs? So I thought this was just something that I wanted to talk about, just because, even just very briefly, because sometimes family astrology is quite interesting, like the synastry between family members, and like the, for example, my mom has moon in Aries and her mom had moon in Aries as well. So it's that interesting, and I'm a sun in Aries. So it's like there's certain connections or patterns at times, and I think it's karmic. I think there's a soul connection that we're making with our family members, and sometimes there's certain signs that we share, or certain things that we share. Like my sister and I had a lot of the same aspects, like certain planetary aspects. So I think it's all connected. I think it's all a pattern that we came here specifically to deal with, and we meet certain people, I believe, to teach us certain parts, teach us about certain parts of ourselves, and to have a certain experience with them. So my mother is a Taurus sun and an Aries moon. I'm not 100% sure about her rising. I think it's a bit up in the air, but it seems like she might have Leo rising. And my dad was a Libra sun and most likely a Virgo moon, but I didn't know his birth time. He was born during the day that the moon changed from Leo to Virgo. So there's more chance that it's a Virgo moon, and I believe that he had Virgo moon, but it could have been Leo moon, and I don't know the rising. I can't even guess, to be honest. Yeah, so I think my dad's sun was probably opposite my sun. So that's interesting. And I think maybe his Venus was conjunct my moon, I want to say, because his Venus was in Scorpio, my moon is in Scorpio. And yeah, there's other things I could talk about. But yeah, my mom is Taurus sun, Aries moon, and my dad was Libra sun and possibly, most likely, Virgo moon. Yeah. And this is kind of probably the last question for this video. This is just kind of a short video with questions. I'm going to do another one at some point in the future as well, soon in the future, with other things that I want to talk about. It might be a bit more in depth if we can manage that. So that's why I want to split it up into 2 parts. But I want to talk about what are my favorite areas of astrology at the moment. So one is that this has been in probably one of my favorites for a few years now, is the natal aspects, because I think they give so much psychological depth and flavor into like understanding charts. It's more than just like our signs or the houses. It's the specific inner psychological processes. It's the specific inner psychological conflicts that we have that are often reflected in the outside world, in our external events. It's like a pattern that we have in our lives. Like, so like I have Sun square Uranus, for example, and I tend to have in myself, I have like an unpredictable, erratic quality, and sometimes my actions can be such that like I didn't know why I did something. It was like this intuitive thing that I did, and I didn't know where it came from. So it can seem unpredictable, and I found myself a lot in situations as well that are kind of unpredictable, or something really changes suddenly and things like that. So that's an expression of my own inner psychological process. Is the things that happen on the outside reflect what is going on the inside, right? That is very much a thing, I believe. And then another thing that I really find interesting, and this is more so maybe in the past a few years as well, but like it wasn't something that I really looked at deeply before that. Whereas aspects, I would have kind of known more about aspects before, like way back. But this is something that I've kind of started being interested in the past few years, is the global transits. So when Saturn was conjuncting Pluto, I was very interested in that and how that plays out, you know, with COVID and everything. I like learning about when planets change signs, like when Pluto went into Aquarius. It's actually squaring my moon now. So things like that. Just like what is going on globally, what is going on societally, that is reflected or in the very specific planetary combinations, aspects, right? I find that super interesting. I don't necessarily always know how to talk about it in a very like good way, very educated way, but I love reading like blog posts, articles, watching videos about the global transits. There's a few websites, a few blog articles that I've read that are really good. They give a lot of information about kind of how things were in way back in the past, and kind of connecting that back to what is going on now, or like what has happened since then when the same planetary alignments have happened. I think that's super interesting. It's something that I'd love to be able to talk about a bit more. I'm still learning, so hopefully I will be able to do that more in the future. But yeah, I think global transits are really a great explanation of this kind of pattern that we're all creating and weaving together on this earth, right? We are all kind of, I think it's also actually reflective of what is happening with people individually. So there's the individual and there's the global, and those are connected. Inevitably, those are connected. So if Saturn and Pluto are conjuncting, that is maybe a reflection of what human beings have collectively accumulated, but also individually they have created this. So each person in the collective has somehow created this, if that makes any sense. It's kind of difficult to explain, but I think it's not a coincidence that we have certain planetary aspects at certain times, right? I think it's like people need that in that moment, or they have created that in that moment. The individual makes the collective. And then I also lately am quite intrigued by synastry aspects. So I think, like I said, that we come into the world with certain signatures, and then we meet people with certain signatures. It's kind of like almost deliberate in a way. Like I think we have free will, but it's I think there are certain patterns that seem like they're inevitable, and that like we meet certain people in order to learn certain things, right? And they learn certain things from us, and I see that all the time. And so I think synastry aspects are a great way of learning about how we influence, how we affect each other on a psychological and even mundane level, right? So if my Pluto is conjunct somebody else's sun or moon, you know, how does that show up in them? How does that show up in me? And what is that creating in the relationship, in the friendship? What is that creating in our lives, in our consciousness? What am I learning from this experience? What am I learning from this friendship or this relationship? What are they learning from this friendship or this relationship? Or potentially, what are they learning from this friendship or this relationship, right? So that's it for this video. I'm gonna hopefully make a part 2 soon with other questions. If you have any questions, do email me at mattothinks@gmail.com, or leave a comment down below if you found any of this interesting, or if you do have a question, or if you want me to make a certain video or something like that. I'd be very open to at least reading those, and hopefully I can make some of those videos. And if you like this, leave a thumbs up and subscribe if you want more content from me, please. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed this. Thank you so much for listening.